This video is brought to you by my wonderful Patreon teams. If you want to be part of the Patreon, please click the link down below, and if not, that's totally fine. I hope you enjoyed the video. We all knew this one was coming. The fear of the arachnids. But let's be serious, what we're here for is the spiders. Aren't we all? I suppose we should just get to it. Arachnophobia in gaming. Here we go. Arachnophobia is possibly the most common phobia out there. Many people suffer from it, but not a single person has proof why. Many believe it could actually be from evolution, as a way to protect us during a time where bugs were of course larger and we were way more prone to the dangers of the outside world. It's believed to just be an instinct inside some people to just hate them instinctively, which is very similar to the fear of snakes, birds and even the dark possibly. Psychologist Graham Davey once did an experiment in 1991 where he theorised that it may be a gender-biased phobia. He took on both genders and made it split half and half, and resulted with a 71% of subjects who felt the fear were actually turning out to be female. But of course this was debunked because it may have just been a coincidence that a lot more females on that day had this phobia, as of course many males also suffer from it. I've actually done some digging myself though, and it appears there seems to be no sign of any natural psychological conditioning. Once again, Graham Davey was shocked by the lack of evidence of any spider-based trauma within the people who may suffer from this phobia. And for the life of me personally, I couldn't tell you why I fear these little things. I have never been bitten, I've never had a bad experience with spiders besides me reacting to them in a scared sort of manner. I've never had a spider crawl on me that caused me to go into a blinding panic to cause this phobia. I've always had this fear for no reason and I couldn't tell you what's caused it. But maybe there is something that's just way more pettier than it just being a matter of life or death. I mean, look at this thing. They're ugly. Gross 8 legs which scatter around, terrifying 8 eyes, and of course the worst thing I hate about these things is their disgusting big bulbous abdomen. They're gross. You're fucking disgusting. And though the evidence of psychological conditioning is very vague, it doesn't stop Hollywood from making us realise how horrible and terrifying these creatures could be on the silver screen. In the same vein as Jaws, Snakes on a Plane or even Anaconda, we have this intrigue to make films that capitalise on the horrors of the animal kingdom, and what happens when we as a species find out that we may not be on top of the food chain. Films like 1955's Tarantula, 1977 Kingdom of the Spiders, and of course 1990's Arachnophobia, which puts full throttle on the uncomfortable meter and plays on the idea of what spiders could be hiding within your house and where they could be hiding just out of sight and out of reach. But arguably the one that had the biggest impact on me is one that not many people got to see. It was the cutscene from 1933's King Kong, where they descend into a weird insect pit and it's rough. And well, let's just say that Peter Jackson, in all his full horror glory, decided to remake it in his King Kong remake. And talking about Peter Jackson and the squirminess of insects, I remember the first time I saw the movie version of The Lord of the Rings Shelob, and oh god. Still to this date, that scene makes me feel so uncomfortable. The way that her exoskeleton looks, the glossiness of her eyes, the stickiness of the webs, the fact that she still lives at the end of it and could be waiting within her lair, waiting for the next prey to wander along and get trapped inside her web. It's gross, and when Sam has to touch it with his bare feet, it just makes me think of what spiders feel like, and it gives me shivers and and despite my utter hate for these giant spiders, I still have a love for the movie 8-Legged Freaks. I remember when I saw this as a kid, and it's a good blend of horror and comedy. The spiders themselves come across cartoony and toon-like with their actions and their silly sounds and the way they react to things within the world. It comes across as more of a comedic and even personifies the idea of these giant spiders. But still, that scene in the mine when the guy sucks on the pipe and they all crawl out his mouth, that's rough. That's not good. But let's get to why we were here in the first place. The games. How creature feature and general hatred for these arachnids play their part within gaming culture. And oh boy does it. Where did it all begin, my fear of spiders in gaming? Was it the terrifying Skulltillers in Ocarina of Time? Nope. Was it the gross spider lady from Brothers? Definitely not. It was actually in fact one of my favourite games of all time, and possibly many people will relate with this. Resident Evil 1. And despite them appearing in the original trilogy, I just want to put a main focus on both the original and the remaster. There is a gross uncanny brilliance to how real they look in both versions, to how they move and how they have this sense of intimidation whenever you see them. But in the remaster, I think they probably gave us one of the best monster reveals the franchise has ever seen. So to reveal this creature within Resident Evil 1 Remake, a giant tarantula lurking over the player, lurking just off screen, just to see these legs crawl into frame, and it really does play on that fear and that element of paranoia that a lot of arachnophobes like myself truly have whenever someone brings up the subject. And if you have arachnophobia, I guarantee during this video you've probably panicked or at least looked around your room once or even twice. But Capcom's understanding for why we hate spiders doesn't just stop there. They understand the phobia of arachnids so well that they decided to cram one in within the first Devil May Cry game. Having Phantom, a giant demon spider, act as a reminder that this game isn't going to be easy, but also to expect the worst around every corner. From having one tough boss fight to a gross chase down a hallway. Side note, I hate spiders when they fit in small spaces, so when I first saw Phantom do this thing where its legs are like crawled up against the floor and you can see that it's tightly squished in there, it's gross, it makes my body squeal. And also have swarms of baby spiders walking around the stage so you can just step on them and get red orbs, at the same time giving you a gross swarm-like feeling as you see their legs scatter about. And though it has aged with time, it still has a pretty good effect and gets across the idea. Like the spiders in Uncharted 3 for example, that swarm Drake and Sully, and you must escape them at any cost. And also another side note, that part where he must squeeze through the gap and you see them just crawling him, once again it's that big fat back abdomen that just grosses me out. Can you imagine that on you? It reminds me of that old Doctor Who episode where there was that weird spider species that holds onto your back. The idea that there's just a giant insect grabbing onto you and you don't know it, it freaks me out. It does freak me out. Ugh. Spiders are almost like a natural villain within fantasy worlds. It really does go with a hero's tale. It's playing as Link within Twilight and destroying the Twilight arachnid Armogoma, which is completely disgusting by the way, and the fact it has an extra eye on the back, it doesn't need it. Or in Dark Souls 2, killing the giant spiders that swarm that small village. Spiders just fit right in with that hero's tale because it seems to be okay to kill them because quite naturally they come across as an evil entity. And as an ongoing phobia, we can understand what it's like to defeat them, and it's even seen with possibly some of the strongest of heroes, including a Jedi. And can you imagine being a Jedi and being scared of I didn't expect to see spiders within The Last Jedi, and I didn't expect them to scare me as much as they did, but they resemble everything I hate about spiders. The defining eyes, the giant gross abdomen which keeps coming up, it's freaking me out, and no matter how powerful you are, they just freak me out and they're made to jump scare you. And I also have a very dumb confession to make. A game that doesn't actually have a single real spider within its gameplay actually triggered my arachnophobia. Are you ready for this? That game was Watch Dogs 1. You have the ability to play a mini game where you play as a giant robotic spider, and for some reason this game mode has no right to be as good and as cool as it is, but after I got over the cool awesome explosions and the abilities and the fact I'm actually doing what I'm doing, I took a moment and focused on the legs and I felt very put off by it. Not because it's a giant spider, but going back to when I said how spiders contort their legs to fit into small spaces and how they hold on to obscure surfaces by arranging their legs in disgusting ways, I was seeing that through the lens of this giant robotic spider, and it reminded me of real spiders, and for some reason that seemed to have got a reaction out of me. And then that's what got me thinking about something. Sometimes with spiders we don't need to see the full thing. Sometimes it could just be the image or a silhouette of what we could possibly fear the most. And if anything that defines this, it's definitely the limbo spider. The very definition of a villain spider within video games. There's no words, no explanations, just a silhouette of an arachnid, and you know this thing is up to no good. As you see its long dangly legs and its gross abdomen silhouette, you know exactly what you're in for, and all it really takes is the imagery of a few webs and a few eggs to realise that you're in trouble, and it's okay to feel the fear. It's okay to feel intense when you see it coming up behind you, and it's okay to feel grossed out when it's wrapping you within its web. In the Spider Lair DLC for Metro Last Light, you're only given a few bearings to survive. But while you wander this lair with just a lighter, it's hard not to feel a few legs scatter down your spine. The moving eggs that hatch with the hundreds and the webs that just fill this place with dread, and just a few babies clinging onto it as you walk through them, and then as they cling onto your body as you walk through them, and then they climb onto your character's face. It's hard to not feel paranoia, and it really is evoking the definition of feeling uncomfortable within a video game. The spiders within Metro truly are the definition of horror, so when you get the flamethrower and you can finally burn them, you realise that you're kind of being for a good time. And something with a very similar atmosphere is of course the frostbite spider from Skyrim, which was popular with a lot of arachnophobes, and it seemed to turn up quite a lot within my comment section when I was asked to go through this phobia. And it didn't actually bother me in the base game. Their scattering of their legs and the descending of the ceilings was creepy for sure, but they really had nothing on me and they didn't make me panic. They're just dumb spiders and they were no match for my Dovahkiin. But then I played Skyrim VR. When you see these things charge at you within full scale, I went into full panic. I went into scream mode and I just wanted to get away. They are massive. Can you see here how I compare my to scale hand to the size of their legs? The fact that this is the size of my hand in real life, well at least close enough, and you can see how big these things are. It's just intimidating to be sitting next to them just to get the footage. And even despite them being dead and getting this close and wanting to hug them like a big teddy bear, I was ready for them to jump at me and scare me and make some sort of move because it just seemed so real and the scale of them was just too much for me. And I know I usually go through a lot of VR games, but I was actually shocked by the lack of spider-based VR games. But I found out that Richie's Plank Experience had a horror setting, and it actually got to scare the crap out of me. As you're backed into a small elevator, which once again going on to my claustrophobia, you see a huge spider just walking towards you, and it just all of a sudden comes towards you with some sort of fierce scream, and it made me jump. But the way its hairs and its glossy eyes look you dead in the eyes, it sparked that primal fear and panic in me to just want to get out of there, and you can see by my reactions that I was genuinely terrified. And lastly, of course, it brings me to the one game that is made for people with arachnophobia in mind. It was the one game that was near impossible for me to play normally. And that's right, I'm of course talking about Ice Age 2, the video game. I'm only kidding. Welcome, Itchy. What are you talking about? Grounded, of course, by Obsidian is what I'm talking about, and it actually opens with a warning saying if you have arachnophobia, you're able to change the settings so that spiders don't appear within this game, and if you're not super okay with it, that's totally fine for you to change it. And I mean, it can't be that bad, right? I was so wrong. Obsidian have created and still are creating possibly one of the most unique survival games around that captures the pure fun and wonder of being a child playing in your back garden. But instead you are literally trapped inside your back garden trying to survive the nature of the world. The insects are all beautifully rendered and some even may come across as very cute, but don't let that fool you, because one step in the wrong direction and you end up in a den filled with, well, your friendly neighbourhood spiders. And you'll find yourself sneaking through one of these hoping you wouldn't wake them, because if you do, oh god, oh god, oh god. These are possibly some of the best looking spiders I think I've ever seen in a video game. The way their legs move and dynamically move around objects within the world, the way their abdomens jiggle, and the speed of them is just damn right frightening. It's hard to not be tempted just to turn on arachnophobia mode just to be rid of them, because I hate spiders, and no matter how good or comfortable you get with the game, you can't help but sense that fear and presence whenever they're around. But that's all I have to share about arachnophobia in video games. I know I didn't go through a few games. I know I didn't talk about the Minecraft spiders because personally they've never really bothered me and they are cuter than they are scarier. I didn't talk about Dragon Age 2 because I've never played the Dragon Age series, and I know I didn't talk about the trike within Doom 3, which was a recommendation, but once again I didn't really play Doom 3 and so I couldn't relate with that as a story. But please tell me your personal stories of spiders, and if you do have anything to share, please leave it down below. I would love to read it. I'd love to read all your comments, and please tell me what you would like to see me cover in the future. But next time we'll be entering the land of the giants and megalophobia, and I will see you then, and of course I'll see you at the next checkpoints. Goodbye.